Alliance.
Hawe two. Hawe two. Long live the EFF, long live. Long live the Commander-in-Chief, Julius Malema, long live. Ripilele, Commander-in-Chief, Julius Malema, ripilele. Sipilele, Mongabeli, Julius Malema, sipilele. Long live the Commander-in-Chief, long live. Long live the Commander-in-Chief, long live. Hamandla. Hawe two. No, thank you. Sithanda ukubingelela the Commander-in-Chief and the President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Julius Malema, to Gauteng. Thank you very much, President, for coming to us and coming to this gathering of branches of the EFF. We refer to branches because these are delegates that have been given the responsibility and the mandate from structures of the EFF at a branch level to represent them at the 3rd National People's Assembly. And Commander-in-Chief, they've made it very clear that they are not going anywhere. They've reaffirmed their position to the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. They will hold the fort, they will defend, and they will ensure that they advance and rebuild this movement to be what it is in the eyes of society. Batapili, without a waste of time, I bring to you the Commander-in-Chief and the incoming President of South Africa, Comrade President Julius Malema. Amandla!
Amandla. Viva EFF, viva. Tata EFF, tata. Awe mushwa makudu, awe. Awe mushwa GNU, awe. Down with ANC, down. Down with UDM, down. Down with PAC, down. Down with DA, down. Down with Freedom Front, down. Down with AfriForum, down. Amandla. Thank you very much, Chairperson of the province and the Secretary of the province, all commissars who are here, led by Commissar Liane Mateis, the leadership of the province, the regions, and all branch delegates who are here in the meeting of the Provincial General Assembly. We also greet members of the media who are not going to get any interview after this, because from here I'm going straight home. We are not going to speak for too long because we are going to have a long discussion with you on the 13th of December at the National People's Assembly. So we thought it is important to come and just greet you and share with you some few tips which will make you a super delegate. We have gathered you here today to conduct a dry run of our National People's Assembly to determine whether indeed the delegates which have been elected in the branch People's Assembly and branch General Assemblies are people who can touch, feel, and see. Each and every one of you hold a massive responsibility as you have been entrusted with a mandate by your branches who represent communities at what base level to advance the challenges, needs, and aspirations of the people who reside where you come from. Remember, when your BGA, BPA was not correcting, you did door-to-doors, and the people where you come from are aware that the EFF is going to its national conference, and they will be waiting in anticipation for the outcomes of the National People's Assembly. Fighters, as you are seated there today, you have a duty to be responsible with the power that has been delegated to you by the branches. As you are seated in this Provincial General Assembly, you have the responsibility to be disciplined and participate in the discussions around the discussion documents and the plan of action of the EFF in your province over the next 5 years. As a delegate of the EFF, you have a duty to reflect on the leadership question. And in your reflection, you must be incorruptible. misuse of organizational resources to pursue selfish, narrow, and factional interests. It is we must guard against the parenting of delegates in places which are not approved by the EFF and the use of transport that does not belong to the EFF to transport you as delegates. Fighters, you must not allow the power that you hold on behalf of the people to be purchased by individuals who are seeking election or who are promoting anarchy in the National People's Assembly. Comrade delegates, to allow yourself to be brought to undermine the integrity of the third NPA of the EFF will constitute a form of infiltration, and you will be remembered in the same line as those who have led the EFF, who tried and failed to infiltrate it and destroy this people's movement. The EFF has most recently experienced dangerous levels of infiltration, because this infiltration has been perpetuated by founders of this movement, who were converted into sleeper agents and double agents who sat amongst us but reported elsewhere. This challenge we were faced, which you must, as delegates, reflect on, is one that can only be characterized as infiltration. The term infiltration is not a buzzword that is used to smear those who disagree with us, but it is a term that captures the process of when one deliberately entrenches themselves in an organization for purpose of sabotage, deceit, and betrayal. Infiltration manifests itself in a different ways, and contrary to popular belief, it does not only begin at easily identifiable signs of being a double agent, but it begins at a level comprising of ideas. It is when ideas and principles are sacrificed at the altar of self-interest that infiltration manifests itself, and that self-interest can be disguised as being in the best interest of the movement. The EFF was not only confronted by infiltration for the purpose of sabotage in elections, or for the purpose of destroying the organization as we know it. We were also confronted by an ideological infiltration and political degeneration. The ideological infiltration that confronts us is so sinister because it has the ability to utilize revolutionary language to justify compromise, betrayal, and collaboration. It is those who were most skilled amongst us in ideological language and rhetoric who have used the very same ideological tools of analysis to perpetuate and justify the betrayal of our people and our values as an organization. We have praised them, awarded them with titles, and sacrificed the task of political and ideological development of our movement to their hands. And they have used our trust as a weapon to strike against the very foundations for who we are. Commissars, infiltration in the EFF did not start when a few high-ranking members resigned from the EFF, but it began when certain individuals began to think of themselves as the custodians of thinking in our movement. And unfortunately, we allowed it. The ideological infiltration of the EFF began when we allowed our struggle for liberation to be individualized. And it is that process that allowed ambition to thrive and ideological principle to die. The consequences of this long process of ideological infiltration started showing themselves when there were attempts to convince us to collaborate with the historical enemy at the highest level of governance. But this is not where it begins, and not even for the EFF, because our infiltration is not unique to us, but it is a phenomenon that is common for African liberation movements. The infiltration of the EFF is no different from the infiltration that has confronted the former liberation movement here in South Africa, not only in 1994, but various moments in its struggle, including its formation. As a movement for economic freedom, we are victims of a historical infiltration of our values and ideals as freedom fighters. And it is an infiltration we have inherited in the same way that we have inherited the liberation struggle itself. Commissars, in order to explain the culture of infiltration that we have inherited, I will argue to explore what I will call the three historical parallels of compromise that define and characterize the infiltration of the EFF. The similarities in history with what we have experienced recently can be drawn between the character and form of struggle by the ANC in its formative stage, the political degeneration of the liberation movement during the armed struggle, and the Burkina Faso moment which led to the untimely death of Thomas Sankara. The parallels will show all of you as delegates that the signs of infiltration and compromise were there, but we refuse to accept them for what they are because of dishonesty with ourselves and our sacrificing of the organization to the culture of individualism. Since its formation, when it was still named the South African Native National Congress, the ANC had in its blood the seeds of compromise. At the center of its aims and objectives upon its formation was the return of the land for the privileged few, and they sought to attain this land through submission to our colonizers in Britain and inclusion in the colonial empire. It was an organization formed to write petitions to the then King of England, begging for recognition and inclusion in the settler colonial system and begging for protection of the rights of Africans from the very people who had taken these rights away. At the center of this petition was the character of submission to the imperial rule, and one such petition written to King George V was written in the year 1914 by the South African Native National Congress following the adoption of the Native Land Act in 1913. This petition was a general plea that the colonial government of Britain, which had stolen the land, must be the same government that protects the land rights of Africans. A portion of the petition reads as follows, that petitioners say that when their forebears submitted themselves to the rule of the British government and paid homage to them, they fully accepted the sovereignty of Great Britain and no other. The petitioners have never begrudged members of the white race who strongly and solemnly against being gradually squeezed out of rights of the land in proportion to their numbers and on the same terms and conditions as the white race. Fighters, the point of departure by the ANC to resolve the land question was one of submission and collaboration to white rule, meaning that since its inception, it was born with the characteristics of compromise. These were petitions that pleaded to collaborate with the perpetrators of injustice in order to secure the return of our land and rights for Africans. This means that so-called revolutionaries were willing to submit themselves to imperial rule in exchange for a seat at a colonial table, and used the need for the land return as a bargaining chip to justify their inclusion at a compromised table. If we look back just a few months ago, we as the EFF standing in front of you today were put under immense pressure by those who have left us behind to write petitions to the ANC and the GNU for inclusion in their compromised government, which is led by descendants of settler colonialists and white supremacists. We were persuaded to do so because there was a strong desire for positions at the expense of our principles of anti-racism and the return of the land. Fighters, the pressure we suffered to compel us to compromise, and which is apparently the cause for the people to abandon the EFF, constitute an infiltration and weakening of the core values and principles of the EFF. Let us fast forward to the eve of the 1969 Morogoro Conference, which occurred during a period where the ANC had objectively been redirected onto the correct revolutionary path by the Youth League of 1944, and the armed struggle had been assumed. This liberation movement, once again, was confronted by a form of infiltration to which Crisani objected to his historic letter titled the Honey Memorandum. For the parallel of compromise to apply, one part of the Honey Memorandum must be noted, which was critical diagnosis of the liberation movement's level of activism and lack of appreciation of the prevailing reality in South Africa at the time. Crisani wrote that the ANC leadership in exile has created a machinery that has become an end in itself. It is completely divorced from the situation in South Africa. It is not in a position to give an account of the functioning branches inside the country. We are disturbed by the careerism in the ANC leadership abroad, who have in every sense become professional politicians rather than professional revolutionaries. Fighters, although the EFF may not be involved in an armed struggle at this particular moment, this diagnosis of organizational decay of the ANC before the Morogoro Conference in 1969 should be an instructive reminder to all of us of the symptoms of political degeneration. On this point, I wish to inform you that we as the leadership made a similar diagnosis of an aloof leadership style and character in KZN after the manifesto launch of the EFF, which was held at Moses Mabhida on the 11th of February 2024. We cautioned the then established Central Election Task Force that there is a degeneration in activism and organizational presence by the EFF in KZN. Despite the fact that all reports in terms of election machinery told us a perfect story, the deploys to KwaZulu-Natal during this period was completely divorced from the situation in KwaZulu-Natal. And this was possibly due to factors such as preoccupation with personal career objectives, and that instead of being a revolutionary that was in touch with reality, there was a creation of a machinery for the purpose of compliance. The same way Crisani warned the ANC of a decline of a revolutionary leadership at the height of the armed struggle, we warned the EFF of the decline of a revolutionary and activism leadership in KwaZulu-Natal months before the elections. As an intervention, we even went as far as carefully framing the removal of the head of this organizational decay from KwaZulu-Natal and saying that he will be supported by Secretary General while redeploying him to the Eastern Cape, where organizational work had already been consolidated. These are the length we went to protect the dignity of someone who goes around today claiming that he was ill-treated in the EFF. This is what we did for someone who today calls us gangsters. The orchestrated organizational decay in KZN before election constitutes a clear example of infiltration. We are even being kind by saying that the person who was deployed to KZN for election was divorced from reality in KZN. It may even be true and more worrying that he was aware of the damage to come in KZN and kept quiet because he had already chosen to betray this movement. The final and unfulfilled parallel I want to direct you to fighters is the one of Burkina Faso. As many of you ought to know, Burkina Faso was once led by Thomas Sankara, who assumed presidency of the nation in 1983 and radically changed the relations with the neo-colonial forces. It was Thomas Sankara who led progressive reforms such as the refusal to pay colonial debts and to take loans from institutions such as International Monetary Fund, massive agricultural production under the principle of self-sufficient Burkina Faso, as well as progress in improving healthcare, literacy, and women's rights. As he pursued these initiatives, Sankara had by his side one Blaise Compaoré. Little did Sankara know that he was flanked by an agent of a very imperialist he sought to undermine, and it was his confidante who will lead this overwhelmingly and ultimately assassinate him. Fighters, we are not self-centered enough to compare ourselves to such great revolutionaries, as we have long path to liberating our people, that we must still travel, but to not draw experience from this history will be tantamount to deliberate ignorance. It is a fact we must consider that we as leaders who seek to achieve a better society for all had entrusted our lives to someone who will, if wished, orchestrated our death. The levels of access to our lives, our families, and to what we consume posed a risk to our very lives. But the greatest fear should not be our own death, but what would have happened to this revolutionary movement if the path to kill us was chosen rather than the path to abandon us. Perhaps we must be thankful that the path to desert us was chosen instead. Perhaps we must be thankful that we did not die. But we must register today and for future generations to remember that the dissenting of the EFF at this critical moment in our liberation struggle constitutes an assassination attempt. It is therefore important, fighters, to not individualize even this moment of infiltration and betrayal of the EFF, but to place it within the above historical context. There is nothing unique about this particular betrayal. There is nothing special about the individuals who have perpetuated it. They belong to a long and historical tradition of infiltration and compromising the liberation struggle. It is when we remove this moment from an individual and recognize it as part of the historical struggles of liberation movement that we will be able to reinvent and reimagine ourselves and move forward with a stronger determination in this struggle for the attainment of economic freedom in our lifetime. The people who have led this organization have not only led this infiltration and betrayal, but they even had the audacity to prescribe to us how we must perceive and respond to their infiltration. This is why, fighters, I've said that we have been betrayed by people who have the skill of using revolutionary language for the purpose of manipulation and compromise. It is for this reason I want to commend all of you who did not hesitate and fall into this manipulative thread that sought to tell you that you must characterize betrayal as a revolutionary act. To not renew your membership in the EFF is a betrayal. To defect from the organization you founded in favor of an organization that has just recently surpassed your own organization in election is opportunism. Fighters, to lobby aggressively for a leftist, anti-capitalist, anti-racist, and socialist movement, to govern with our oppressor over the lives of the landless African people is infiltration. It is for this reason, delegates, that moving forward, we must avoid individualism and promotion of people because it feeds into egos and leaves the organization vulnerable to infiltration. But against infiltration, individualism, and maintain revolutionary discipline. Your primary responsibility is that you must maintain the discipline of the movement. Delegates, we take this opportunity to remind you that the following will constitute wrongful lobbying practices. And if you are found to have practiced these things, you are likely to lose your status of a delegate going into the NPA. Raising and using funds and other resources to campaign for elections. Distributing money to EFF members and structures as part of campaigning for leadership elections. Production of t-shirts, posters, and other paraphernalia to promote particular list of candidates. Promising positions or other incentives or threatening to withhold such as a means of gaining support. Using the media to promote a particular list of candidates and to spread malicious rumors, falsehoods, or allegations against those with whom you disagree. Leaking confidential information to the media, secret interaction with journalists with the intention to get them to write stories on internal organizational issues or communicating internal decisions or processes to the media without due authorization. Negative campaigning, which relates to the attacks on the integrity of other comrades, both within the structures of the movement and in other forums. Suppressing honest and legitimate debate about the caliber of candidates in formal meetings of the movement. Allowing structures or individuals to condone violation of the constitutional provisions and or regulations and or failing to report such violation when they occur. Using the offices, resources, and staff of the EFF or any state institution or company as a machinery to promote a particular list of candidates. Using violence, intimidation, and threats to coerce or force those who hold a different view. Setting up structures outside the organization to promote or lobbying for a particular candidate. Convening meetings to discuss leadership issues under the false pretext that they are organized constitutional structures. Production and distribution of documents and pamphlets not approved by the structures of the organization will not be allowed. The use of social media to discredit the organization and other members, such as Facebook, WhatsApp groups, or Twitter, will not be allowed. EFF members nominated for leadership positions in the CCT must actively, vehemently discourage anyone from using their names to campaign for leadership position. Anyone who says, if you don't vote for so and so, we are going to disrupt that NPA, whoever they are speaking about must denounce those people. Because if you don't denounce them, it means you are approving of their wrong behavior and you shall be disqualified as a candidate. No EFF from CCT or PCT is permitted to create the perception that their lobbying is a decision of the upper structure. No one must come and say this list belongs to the democratic centralism. Now there is no time for democratic centralism. It's time for branches to speak on their own without being intimidated. Lobbying shall stop once the process of electing the new CCT has been concluded at the Third National People's Assembly. Once the new CCT is elected, it becomes the duty of all EFF members to unite and rally behind the newly elected leadership, regardless of their preference the delegates had before the elections. We urge you to remain loyal only to the National People's Assembly guidelines, the Constitution of the EFF, the Code of Revolutionary Discipline, and the EFF Founding Manifesto. Do not be loyal to the Constitution of a faction because it will not save you. If anyone tries to make you conduct yourself outside of these revolutionary documents, then it is your revolutionary responsibility to report such individuals. A delegate of the EFF is not silent in the face of corruption. A delegate of the EFF does not look away when they sense the movement is about to be compromised or be put into disrepute. Fellow fighters, a delegate of the EFF is loyal. And as our Constitution demands on us in Section 6, subsection 7b, loyalty means that, I quote, at all times, members and leaders will not keep quiet when the organization is unfairly criticized and attacked in private and in public. Loyalty to the organization means that members will remain active members even when removed from positions of responsibility or deployment. Loyalty means members of the EFF will not join in the opposing and opponent forces who unfairly criticize the organization and its leadership. Close quote. The organization can never be under attack. You keep quiet. And the only time you want to show that you are loyal is by being present in a meeting. But out there, you don't defend the organization. Out there, you speak very bad about the organization in private. That's why you can't speak good about it in public, because you know that those you told your views in private will know where you really stand. It is for this reason that you as delegate must be vigilant and loyal, and never allow enemy forces to coerce you into unfairly criticize the organization or its leadership. Delegates, this means that when the organization or its leaders are unfairly attacked in public or in private, it is your duty to stand up and defend the revolution, because this movement and its leadership are the custodians of the revolution. Fighters, the fact that we are heading to the Third National People's Assembly does not mean that we no longer have a leadership, that anarchy must prevail until the Electoral Committee dissolves the Central Command Team at the National People's Assembly. This organization remains led, and this leadership will guide you throughout this process alongside your provincial leaders. Fighters, when we say that you must not unfairly criticize the leadership, we are not saying do not engage in constructive criticism, because our Constitution allows this. Section 6, subsection 5 of the Constitution speaks to constructive criticism and self-criticism and reads as follows. From time to time, members and structures of the EFF should engage in constructive criticism and self-criticism, meaning they should openly and honestly review the work they do and avoid all forms of boastfulness and self-glorification over minor achievement. The People's Assembly, CCT, PCT, RCT, BCT, deployed cadres and members should periodically review the work they are doing against their own set target. They should always ask whether they have taken the correct decision, whether they have achieved what they intended to achieve within the time periods they decided on. Fellow fighters, none of you must therefore feel like you are censored from reflecting and engaging in constructive criticism, because when you are critiquing this organization, you are critiquing yourself, because you are the organization. The discussion documents of the Third National People's Assembly are part and parcel of this collective constructive criticism and self-criticism, especially in the organizational character and redesign document. It is this document, discussion document amongst others, which should inform your discussion here today. There are many critical questions which you must reflect on, such as the reorganizing of the regional structures into sub-regional structures, the establishment of the youth command, collapsing the student command into the youth command, because students are members of society before they are students. They should be able to exchange under one roof with the youth in the rural area, in the urban areas, in the suburbs and everywhere else where young people are found. There is a suggestion that we must increase the membership of the EFF from 100 to 200 for a branch to be a branch in good standing. All of this can be agreed to or be rejected, especially the one of organizing regional structures. I was telling Vuyan that this one, every time I speak about it, people look sad, but they don't know that they've got the power to can reject it. Nothing has been resolved here. It's a discussion document. Don't be angry at discussion document. Raise your views and tell us why you don't agree that we redesign the structures of the EFF. This discussion document ought to be the bedrock of your discussion, because you cannot discuss leadership question before you discuss the mandate these leaders must carry out. There must be a term of reference of what these leaders will be leading, so that they know what is expected of them before they accept the responsibility of leadership. Let us exhibit the highest form of discipline, fellow fighters, and in doing so, not shy away from reflecting on the recent occurrences within our movement and within society in general. The National People's Assembly is important because it is our commitment to internal democracy, a principle which must never be compromised, because it is Leninism to allow all party members to engage on the tactical questions and planning of the movement and to engage on the election of party leadership. It does not matter whether democracy goes in your favor or not, but our commitment to this principle is very important. Be honest in your discussion and revolutionary in your approach, and avoid at all times the temptation to fall into the traps of liberalism. In conclusion, I want to share with you the key principles to avoid organizational decay and to avoid allowing liberal tendencies to inspire you as a delegate of the EFF. These are 11 points combating liberalism as developed by Mao Zedong, the chairman Mao Zedong of China. Liberalism fighters manifest itself in the following ways, and we must always strive to avoid practicing it. To let things slide for the sake of peace and friendship when a person has clearly gone wrong. Because it's your friend, because it's your roommate, because it's your schoolmate, because it's your lover, because it's your wife or husband, you allow a wrong thing to slide because you just want peace. That is a liberal tendency which must not be allowed. To indulge in irresponsible criticism in private instead of actively putting forward one suggestion to the organization. To say nothing to the people to their faces, but to gossip behind their backs, or to say nothing at a meeting, but to gossip afterwards. To show no regard at all for the principle of collective life, but to follow one's own inclination. This is a tendency that should not be allowed. When you hold a view as an individual, once that view is defeated by a collective wisdom, your view is nothing. What matters is what has been decided upon. You must not boast about how correct you have been, even when there is a collective decision. To let things drift if they do not affect one personally. To say as little as possible while knowing perfectly well what is wrong. To be worldly wise and play safe and seek only to avoid blame. When you speak during a crisis, we can't hear you because you don't want to be seen to be taking a side. You just pretend like you are with everybody. You can be given 40 minutes to speak. Even after 40 minutes, we don't hear what you are saying. You just hear a person next to you say, Kuluma Babauti, after you spoke, because you have said a lot of nothing. Not to obey orders, but to give pride of place to one's own opinion, to demand special consideration from the organization, but to reject its discipline. To indulge in personal attacks, pick quarrels, vent personal spite, or seek revenge instead of entering into an argument and struggling against incorrect views for the sake of unity or progress or getting the work done. To hear incorrect views without rebutting them, and even to hear counter-revolutionary remarks without reporting them, but instead to take them calmly as if nothing had happened. Someone sit with you in a private meeting in expensive restaurants and houses, and tell you that I'm leaving the EFF, and then you decide not to tell the EFF. It's a tendency that must not be accepted. Because once you hear a view that has got a potential to damage the image of the organization and bring the organization into disrepute, you are duty bound to report such matter. Even if they raise it as a joke, you must go and repeat that joke, that so-and-so was joking in this way. Because you might think it's a joke, only to find that it was a program of action. To be amongst the masses and fail to conduct propaganda and agitation, or speak at a meeting, or conduct investigation and inquiries amongst them, and instead to be indifferent to them and show no concern for their well-being, forgetting that one is a communist, and behaving as if one were an ordinary non-communist. You cannot, when you are found in the meetings of communities or with our people, fail to push propaganda of the EFF, fail to agitate those people, and behave as if you are not part of the socialist agenda of the EFF. To see someone harming the interest of the masses and you keep quiet. A person goes around cutting street poles, saying they want copper out of those street poles. Someone goes and decides to engage in illegal dumping. You don't take an individual stand and say what you are doing is harming our community. Stop what you are doing, because a revolutionary will not allow anyone who's engaged in activities that are going to harm communities to work half-heartedly without definite plan or direction. You have to have a plan. You can't just be busy, and when we check, you are busy over nothing. To regard oneself as having rendered great service to the revolution, to pride oneself on being a veteran, to disdain minor assignments while being quite unequal to major tasks, to be slipshod in work and slack in study. So fighters, you cannot say, I'm a veteran, I've joined the EFF in 2013. I am what. That is a reactionary view. If you are a veteran and you have joined in 2018, if you formed the EFF, history will speak for you. Don't speak for yourself. To be aware of one's own mistake and yet no attempt to correct them. You are aware that you have made a mistake. You must take it upon as a revolutionary to correct that mistake. Because if you don't do that, you are going to destroy yourself. It is called self-destruction. As Marxists, Leninists, and students of Fanon, let us engage frankly and remain revolutionary and avoid liberalism at all costs. Comrades, the unity of our movement is very important. There is no organization in South Africa that has ever united black people better than the way the EFF has done. The EFF, from its inception, it has never been ashamed of being with black people. From its inception, the EFF said, we are going to represent the oppressed, and the oppressed are black people. It is only the EFF The EFF is the only organization that said we are going to fight for the total liberation of black people in South Africa. And therefore, the time has come for all of us to be brave that there is no old man who's going to unite black people in South Africa. Only the EFF can unite black people in South Africa. The track record of the EFF gives a clear scientific proof that only the EFF was able to put more than 120,000 people under one roof at the FNB Stadium. No any other organization has done that. Even now, they will never dare to go to the FNB Stadium. Yet they say they can mobilize and organize and unite black people. Fighters, there is no one and no organization, historically and even now, that exists beyond the borders of South Africa. It is only the EFF. So how do you say you can unite people when you are 82 years old, having failed to unite them for the past 82 years, you think you can do it now? The unity we are talking about is not a lip service. It's not something used to mobilize people for the sake of positions. We need this unity of Africans in practical terms. That's why we are the only organization that has got EFF Nigeria, EFF Ghana, EFF Liberia, EFF Namibia, EFF Lesotho, EFF even in diaspora. Only the leadership of the EFF in South Africa gets celebrated by African people all over the continent, all over the world, and even in the diaspora. All the black people, wherever they are found, they know of this animal called the EFF. Why would you want to close the EFF for a spaza shop with expired foods? We cannot allow a situation where this movement, with such a huge infrastructure, with an office owned by this organization, with farms belonging to this organization, with members belonging to this organization, with houses built for ordinary people by this organization, with students who were taken to school by this organization. We woke up one morning and said to all those children, the organization you committed that when you grow up, you are going to vote for it is no more. We would have sold the future generation. We are not going to sell the future generation for the dreams of an 82-year-old man who is corrupt to the core, who has found his own thing for his own gain. Comrades, we are going to fight corruption during Zuma, even after Zuma. Zuma is corrupt. We were not misled about the corruption of Zuma. Cyril Ramaphosa is corrupt. We were not misled about the corruption of Cyril Ramaphosa. And we don't just talk about fighting corruption. We will be on the streets on Tuesday going to fight Parapana in the next court because we don't pay a lip service. Where are they? All these people who are saying they can unite Africans. The thing that is eating away the unity of Africans, the development of Africans, the liberation of Africans is corruption. You stop corruption, you open doors for service delivery. That's why we are fighting corruption, because we know the defeat of corruption will mean free education and free health care and quality houses for our people. Amanda!
No, thank you. Sithanda ukubonga Mongameli, Commander-in-Chief, Comrade President Julius Malema, for having given us guidance in terms of how we must conduct ourselves. We can reassure you, Commander-in-Chief, that before you would be super delegates of the EFF from Gauteng going towards the 3rd NPA. What you have said to us, we are going to internalize it. What you have given to us, we are going to indoctrinate it to all the structures of the EFF and move in that unison's voice as we go towards the 3rd NPA and reaffirm our position as members of the EFF who are prepared to rebuild this EFF, who are going to defend this movement and advance the struggle. Baitapele, we are just going to break in song and ask our Commander-in-Chief and just give space for our Commander-in-Chief to then excuse us as we continue with our program of action. So as soon as that is done, we are going to break into lunch because we've already done the summary of the discussion documents. Né? We're going to break into lunch, have lunch, be back at 4 o'clock. Né? Be back at 4 o'clock. Masesingena from 4 o'clock, sesingena indabeni zethu up until the end of the program as written in our agenda. So let's just break into a song so that the Commander-in-Chief can then leave. Please do not leave the building. Do not leave this hall up until GPS will then inform you that where our lunch is going to be. Amanda, how are you too?
Not yours.